Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of BRob Inspired. I am super excited today, honored that a good friend of mine, Rankey, and her daughter, Jenna, who I coached for several years in basketball, one of the best kids, one of the best athletes that I've had the opportunity to work with. But we're here to talk about Allie's story, which Jenna is a part of. Probably one of the most inspirational stories that you're going to hear. So settle in. It's going to be amazing. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much
Jenna,
for having
welcome
us.
to the show.
Thank you.
Well, the impetus of the show is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And when I heard your story, I was like, man, I've got to reach out to her. I've got to have an opportunity for her to share this story. I know you're in the beginning stages of exploring writing a book about your life and what's happened and transpired and how you've dealt with adversity. I would love, if you're open to it, let's go back to the beginning, how all this started, the story with, your family going to the Lake of the Ozarks and then coming back to St. Louis on probably a 2.5 hour drive. Your mom's in the lead caravan car. You and your brother are in the middle car. Your father's behind you guys. Take us back to that day. Like, what happened? How old were you? How did this entire thing happen?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us.
Sure.
It was a hot July 13th, Sunday morning. We ended up with 3 cars down at the Lake of the Ozarks. As a family, we loaded up, and my parents figured the safest route home would be my mom in the lead and my brother and I in the truck in the middle with our 2 little dogs and the kennel in the back, and my dad following behind. And we left the lake and headed back to our house in Hazelwood. And of course, we stopped in Kingdom City for a bathroom break.
Yeah.
I even remember being upset with my brother because when I came out of the restroom, he was already in the gas station as well, and I was mad because the dogs were still in the truck, and it was a hot July morning. So I remember saying, "Give me your keys, the dogs are in the truck." And so I went back out, turned the air on in the truck, and we then filed all back out onto Highway 70, same order, my mom in the front, my brother and I in the middle, and my dad in the back. And I actually opened up my Diary of Anne Frank book for my children's literature class that summer and just started reading. And the next thing I even remember is my dad pulling me out of the truck saying, "Allie, what hurts? What hurts?" Luckily, my brother, who was driving, my brother was 16 at the time, I was 20. My brother had stayed conscious. He remembered hearing me scream. Come to find out, we did have a tire blowout, and we rolled approximately 5 to 6 times through the median. We landed hood to hood on a car going westbound, and then that impact made us land back onto our tires. I just remember my dad saying, "What hurts?" And I just remember saying, "I can't breathe." I did have a punctured and collapsed lung. There was a husband and wife behind my dad who the wife ran up and kept my mom back, and the husband was with my dad. Luckily, he had a pocket knife, and they had to cut my shoulder strap in half to get me out. It was embedded in my neck. Then they ran over supposedly and got my brother out, and my brother kept saying, straighten my legs, but they were already straight. So my dad knew probably there was something wrong with his neck. Supposedly there was just obviously traffic stop. People were coming out using their car shades, just holding them over us because it was a hot July morning to shield us from the sun. Supposedly was going to be about 30 minutes for helicopters to get to the scene. They couldn't wait that long, obviously, for me with a punctured and collapsed lung, so they had to try to take me by ambulance. My mom then jumped in the ambulance with me, and my dad waited there at the scene with my brother. And we had to pull over in a little hospital in Fulton and for me to get my chest tubes in. Meanwhile, my dad had already gotten his car since they had taken my brother by a helicopter to Columbia Hospital and University Hospital. Once I did get my chest tubes in, one of the helicopters came to Fulton Hospital to get me, and they had to call a taxi for my mom since she couldn't ride in the helicopter with me.
Oh man! I can imagine what your mom and dad experienced and went through that day.
Yeah. So the helicopter came and got me. My dad then was already at the Columbia Hospital since he had followed my brother. And then my mom got in the taxi, got there. The accident was on a Sunday. Monday, they told my parents that my brother would never walk again since he broke his neck. And Tuesday I told my parents that I was not going to survive. So that was just the beginning. My brother then on that Thursday got his neck set. They took bone from his hip and put it in his neck. He was fitted with the halo and then moved over to rest rehab. I was a day-by-day situation. I was in a 7-week drug-induced coma. The accident was July 13th. The first I remember is waking up and it being the first week of September.
Wow.
Being in that drug-induced coma. And I remember mouthing to my mom, since I still had my trach in, "Did you call them? So I'm supposed to be at school." And she's like, "We're not worrying about school right now." My brother, one of his goals he set at Rest Rehab was to start school on the first day, his junior year of high school, with everybody else. He did start his junior year in a halo and a wheelchair, his junior year.
Wow.
While we were in Columbia, my parents were able to stay at the Ronald McDonald House since my brother was 16. But when he did move back to Hazelwood, my dad went back to Hazelwood with him so he could start his junior year. My mom stayed obviously in Columbia with me, and she rented a furnished apartment just to basically shower. She lived at the hospital the rest of the time. They then transported me back to St. Louis down to Barnes. Probably towards the end of September, and I was there till the following February.
So what are you thinking about at 20 years old, waking up months later, being like, what was your physical condition at this point when you woke up and you're 20 years old in the hospital?
When I woke up, my physical condition was my whole abdomen was gone, top to bottom, right to left. I was held in by cellophane. All of the skin on my abdomen had turned black. So my mom had told me that every other day for about 3 weeks I went to surgery. All of the skin had turned black, so they had to breed it off. The tissue was black, the muscle was black. So I went to surgery. It was basically dead. So I had fistulas or holes all through my intestines. And it was held in by what looked like saran wrap.
Did you move at all, or were you in a bed the entire time?
I couldn't move. I was, I was in what they called at the time a rojo bed, basically to help prevent bed sores. But I could not get out of bed. So it was on my back for 7 months.
And pain-wise, can you even describe or begin to describe?
They had me on a lot of pain medicine.
I
was on, fentanyl patch and Valium drip, and it was a lot of pain meds.
As you were having these surgeries, was the premise of you not being here still a part of that?
Many times.
It was touch and go?
Even once my dad had returned to St. Louis with my brother, back to Hazelwood. There were, I believe, twice when I remember one time I got a nasty gallbladder infection, and I was close to being gone, and they called my dad back here in St. Louis, and I think he made it to Columbia in a very short amount of time. So down Highway 70.
Wow.
They had moved me up to out of intensive care up to a floor, and I was only there for 2 days. And the next thing I knew, I woke up and I was back in intensive care. I was even what they call like delirious. I was like reliving my soccer days in high school, and
wow.
Sort of talking to my friends I played with soccer, and just because they said I was like reliving my past, and because I was, it turned out I just had a nasty infection going through my body, and I can't tell you how many times I had sepsis, and just because I had such an open wound. And
then how long until you were out of the hospital?
When they moved me back to Barnes, I was done with the trauma part. I needed a doctor to figure out how to put me back together, basically. So luckily, I got moved to the colorectal floor. And Dr. Ira Codner, he was an amazing doctor. He had a great smile, a great bedside manner. And he definitely took his time in figuring out, okay, this is what I'm going to do to piece you back together. And I had a surgery first to do a skin graft, just to put over the middle of my abdomen to buy some time. And then he went in. It was about a 14-hour surgery where he had to go in, and at first he had showed me, how to change a colostomy bag and everything, because he wasn't certain that he was going to be able to promise that he would be able to piece me back together. But my mom said at about the 10-hour mark, he came out and he said, I think I'm going to be able to piece her back together.
Wow.
And amazingly, he did. I mean, he was able to section out all the holes in my intestines, and he pieced me back together. So that's once that 14-hour surgery was done. That was in January, so I stayed in there. I think I went home February 16th, the day before my 21st birthday. So once he had fixed me internally, we waited about a good year and a half, and then it was time for the plastics team to come in to figure out how to give me more of a fake abdominal wall. Yeah. And my plastic surgeon, David Kaplan, he went in and he basically inserted like 3 crescent-shaped breast implants on my sides that I had my good skin left, and stretched me out for about 2 months and about 1,000 cc's each. And I had to go in every Thursday to get another 100 cc's injected. And so the skin that I have in the middle of my abdomen is what used to be on my sides. In the middle top part of my abdomen, I do have a plastic Marlex mesh. That's my abdominal wall. Wow. But he left nothing down low in case if I was able to have a child, which I did have one biological child, so yeah.
That's incredible.
So yeah.
So just to give our listeners a little bit of perspective, how many surgeries have you had up to this point?
To this date, in 2020, I had surgery number 47 and 48.
Wow.
Yeah. So my goal is someday for my age to get past my number of surgeries. So I just turned 46, so I'm hoping that will be my big birthday party, is when my age gets past that number of surgeries. So,
well, I hope to have an invite to that. That'll be fun.
Yes, you will.
So a couple other things I want to touch on that I think are important with your story, and for people to really understand, kind of what you've been through and the significance of it, especially the inspirational part. I want to talk about this kid, but I also want to go back to, let's talk about the physician that did the mini med school and the teaching that he did. Mm-hmm. It was on medical ethics.
Yes.
I want everybody to hear this story and understand what you went through, how he did it, which I think is genius. Give us some perspective on that.
Yeah, so my colorectal surgeon, Dr. Ira Kodner, that I had just mentioned, who pieced me back together, he had invited me down. The first time I went, I didn't really know what to expect, but I went down a total of maybe 8 or 9 times. Since then, he's retired from doing this, so it sort of broke my heart. But down at BJC, they have a mini medical school, so it's an 8-week class, and Dr. Ira Kodner was the last class, the 8th class, and then they had like a little graduation party. It was open to med students or to the public. So he invited me down for his class, and my parents would come down with me, or my friend Tina, who was my nurse when I was down on the colorectal floor, and we would just sit in the back and we would watch, the first half of the class, which would run about maybe 2 hours, and then when it got to like after that first hour, then all of a sudden he would talk about medical ethics, everything from a doctor's point of view, which a lot of times, as a patient, you don't even think of. When it got to that, after that first hour, all of a sudden he would say, I then was presented with this 20-year-old patient, which being me, who came in from having a car accident, and he would put up all my graphic pictures. And so all the people in the audience would sort of gasp. And he said, the parents were, had their hands tied, they were, tired of what their daughter was going through. They just needed someone to help their daughter, get their daughter fixed. And he would show pictures of my abdomen, and people would just be like, they would raise their hands. He goes, as a doctor, what am I to do? And there were times people in the audience would raise their hands and say, what is even going to be this patient's quality of life? And I'm just, sort of sitting in the back, like smiling, like they don't know that I'm here. And he went on and he said, as a doctor, I am wanting what is best for this patient. And so he would proceed on and he said, these were my options. This is what I chose to do. He goes, I'm going to go on with some more pictures. He said, this is what we did. And he would proceed on and show more pictures, and people just were blown away at the pictures of my abdomen, at what he was, basically the case he was given. And he went on and he showed pictures of what they did, and people just were like shaking their heads. And he said, and then the plastics team came in, and this is what the plastics team did after my surgery. And then he said, I have a few more pictures to share with you. And so he showed them the picture of me on my graduation day. He showed a picture of them on Matt and I on our wedding day. And then he showed a picture of me holding Julia. And people were in tears in the audience. And he goes, I do have one more thing for you. He said, I have Allie here in the audience. And people were just like looking around like, where in the world is she? Like, you got to be kidding. And he said, Allie, will you please come down? And so I stood up and I walked down and I went down. He gave me the microphone then. And I mean, people just, I mean, you see, I looked around the audience and people are like getting out Kleenexes, wiping their tears. And it was just, it was great to be there because it shows the people that, you know, I had people in the audience believing that as a doctor, why should you even bother to operate on this person? Because what is even going to be her quality of life? To, I'm standing here. This doctor didn't give up on me. This doctor chose to do what was best for me and didn't give up, and I'm here. And, you know, people asked me in the audience, you know, they said, were you ever depressed? And I said, there were days that I cried. You know, crying's okay. You know, but I didn't think, okay, if I really cry my eyes out today, then maybe they'll let me go home. No, you know, yeah, there were days that I cried, but I realized, okay, wipe your tears away because it's in the doctor's hands. It's going to be whatever the doctors are going to do, you have to make the best of today. My mom would say before people came in, they would sort of be wiping their tears away and be like, okay, I need a smile, I'm going in to see Allie. And they'd come into my room and I would have a big smile on my face. And they're like, why in the world is she smiling? And I had to. I mean, I had to smile because I knew I had to do whatever I could to get through that day to get to the next day. And it was just my mental way of getting through being in the hospital for so long. I tell my parents that I think mine was more of a mental recovery. Physically, I couldn't really do anything.
Yeah.
It was in the doctor's hands. Mine was a mental recovery. Mentally, I had to tell myself, I'm going to get through this day. I'm going to get through the next day. And when I have a surgery, yep, I'm going to get up and walk when the doctors let me get up and walk, and I'll take one lap around the nurse's station if I can, and then I'll walk some more because not having any abdominal muscles, you know, your balance is a little off. You know, I'm going to walk, you know, as much as I can.
In addition to something as simple as a smile and bedside manner, how that changed your perception, your fight.
Yes.
What would you tell somebody? Everybody has challenges, struggles. Obviously, yours were unfathomable. For somebody that's struggling out there, what would you say? Look, this is how I dealt with it. This is what I would do. My encouragement to you would be what?
I know after the accident, you know, I could have easily just, you know, when the doctor said I wasn't going to make it, I could have easily just, you know, yes, I did survive, but right after the accident, that February, when I got out of the hospital after the doctors pieced me back together, the 2 classes I was taking that summer, that March, they were about the same spot that I was already at where I had left off. The children's literature class, that professor had actually called me while I was still in the hospital, and we talked about children's books, so she passed me for that class. But the teaching music class, my mom drove me back up to UMSL every Tuesday and Thursday, and I joined that class and finished that class for the semester.
Wow.
So I jumped right in, and then when I took off the summer, but that fall I registered for classes and joined right in. So I didn't, yes, I missed a whole year obviously being in the hospital, but I didn't want any of it to get me back. And I just continued right, you know, as soon as I could. And then I should have graduated in 99, but I graduated 2000. I got an outstanding senior award for, you know, jumping right back in and finishing. And, you know, I do believe, you know, one of the reasons why I'm still here, obviously, to be, you know, a wife, a mother, you know, the best I can be is being a teacher is to pass it on to every student that I come in contact with. The word can't is not allowed in my classroom. Yes, you can. It's not easy, but you can do it. You know, so can't is not allowed in my room. Yes, you can. So if I hear, Ms. Rankey, I can't do this, yes, you can. And so, you know, I do have students, you know, they ask me about, you know, scars on my arm or on my neck, and I tell them I was in a bad car accident. I said, but if my brother was told he'd never walk again and I'm not supposed to be here and he's walking and I'm alive, I said, anything's possible.
That's amazing.
And they're like, what? I'm like, yep, so you can do this, let's do it. And So yeah, it's just, sort of a positive message I send to every student. This is my 23rd year teaching, so
wow.
So yeah, hopefully I've inspired some of those students as well. So
when I first met you, I'm like super sweet, kind, nice, and then you told your story. Like physically, you would never know that you had 47 surgeries ever. I've always been told, be nice to everybody. You never know what somebody's carrying with them or going through. Why don't you take us back to after graduation? You meet your husband, Matt. You have 2 beautiful daughters.
Yeah.
Like, how did all that happen? What was your intrepidation after having surgery and physically and being with another person? And I can't even imagine how strong you had to be. What was going through your mind? Probably the fear of, if we do want to have children, what does that look like?
Yeah, I graduated that May of 2000, and of course, I don't even till this day, there's not a day that I have where something doesn't hurt, where it's, I've pulled scar tissue in my abdomen. If I get a cold or a cough, I pull all the scar tissue in my abdomen. Or, I've already had a lumbar fusion, a cervical fusion, so I'm I sort of feel like I'm already 80 years old, but I laugh because, I know there are people out there in the world that have it, 100 times worse than I do. So I smile, and I'm glad I'm here. But when I graduated in May of 2000, that summer, I know I had pulled some scar tissue and went to the doctor and was on some Valium, wasn't feeling very well. But I had one of my best friends, Nikki, call me up and say, hey, we're going out tonight. And I'm like, Nikki, I don't feel good. We're going out. And I'm like, so we went out. And anyway, that's how I ended up meeting my husband, Matt. I met him that night. It was just a meant to be thing. I knew it was. And I also had, in my head, life's too short. And I just knew he was the one. And
wow.
So we were together the whole time. And when we got engaged, about a year later, I told my plastic surgeon that I was engaged, and he told me, he said, I'm very happy for you, but you have 1 year to have a baby. And I'm like, what? Wow. I said, 1 year to have a baby? I said, we're not getting married for like a year and a half.
And what was the reasoning?
The reasoning is because when he reconstructed my abdominal wall, the top of my abdominal wall was a plastic Marlex mesh, and everything else around it was scar tissue. And he told me that the plastic Marlex mesh obviously is plastic, so that would not stretch, and scar tissue can get as hard as concrete. And so he said, I'm going to give you 1 year to have a baby. And so I said, I need to go home and talk to Matt. So we had originally were going to get married on July 13th of '02, which was the 5-year anniversary of the accident. It was fell on a Saturday. We were going to change it from a bad day to a good day to remember. We moved everything up to December 1st of '01. Everything was open, available. So we moved it up, and amazingly, I got pregnant that following March. I was considered high risk, not really because of the baby, just because of my abdomen and the situation. And as the months went on, they gave me the steroid shots to help develop her lungs and everything. But Julia, she wasn't due till December 11th. She came at October 8th at 9 weeks early at 2 pounds 8 ounces.
Oh my gosh.
She when she was born, she came out breathing on her own, never needed oxygen. Matt's wedding band fit all the way up her shoulder. So she did great. I, on the other hand, did not do very well with the pain. My plastic surgeon, David Kaplan, was there to show them, where to cut. I had a C-section on my abdomen. I think because he had told them that I needed more pain meds just because of my drug-induced coma and all the pain meds I was on after the accident. I ended up needing enough pain meds for a 350-pound woman.
Oh my gosh.
Just from, my liver just couldn't tolerate it. So luckily I had finally got enough pain meds in me to calm down and feel, relaxed. But Julia did great. She came out breathing on her own and, did fine. We eventually brought her home November 3rd at 3 pounds 9 ounces. She was very tiny. The preemie clothes were huge on her. So, but we brought her home. She did great. But from that moment on, Matt and I knew that we just got extremely lucky. My plastic surgeon did tell me, he said, I'll give you one more year to try to have one more. And I said, no way.
Yeah.
I said, we just got way too lucky. I said, even the fact that she was a girl, they say premature girls do so much better than boys. The fact that she was a girl, I said, no. I said, we're done. I said, this is God's way of telling us there is another child out there for us. And right away, Matt and I started our adoption process, and luckily we got blessed with Jenna. And unfortunately, though, I could not go to Vietnam. My doctors said, basically my doctors here in St. Louis are my doctors that put me back together. In the past, Matt has had offers. Right now he owns his own company, but in the past, other companies that he worked for gave him, promotions, but we'd have to move to a different state, and he had to turn them down because my doctors here are the ones that know me. So they had said, what would make someone very sick in Vietnam would kill me. And if something would happen to me over there, it would take too long to get me back here. Wow. So I stayed home with Julia. She was 5 at the time, and my husband went to Vietnam with my mom. So he said that was quite a trip going to Vietnam with his mother-in-law.
Which I've heard that story.
Yeah.
We'll save that for another podcast.
So they went to Vietnam. They left on December 6th and arrived home on December 19th with Miss Jenna, who we then found out was born at 27 weeks in Vietnam and survived. So I always tell Matt that both of our daughters are fighters like their mother.
Yes.
So we got Jenna home. She was 2, and then 3 days later turned 3. So it was right around Christmas time. She's got to celebrate her birthday and then celebrate Christmas, and so it was amazing. So we were
House of Miracles.
Blessed. Yes.
So besides getting out of school early today, what do you think about all this? What do you think about your mom's story? I'm sure you've heard bits and pieces, if not all of it, many times, but what are your thoughts on everything?
My mom is the world to me. I absolutely adore you. But her ability to always remain positive, no matter what. And I think she carries that on to me and everyone she meets. And they always tell me, my parents, if you work hard and say you can do it, anything's possible. Mm-hmm. So that's just my whole outlook on life, and, take it one day at a time, and everything happens for a reason, and it's all up to God. Obviously, so.
And I know that, I've told Jenna that, there's times I do have setbacks, and I'm going to have setbacks, the rest of my life probably. I just had to go in last week. My neck's been bothering me again, even though I've had a 3, 4, 6, 7 fusion. Of course, I went to the doctor, and I have a C7, T1 disc bulge again, so I had to go in this week of spring break to get a epidural steroid shot in my neck, and if that doesn't work, then that's surgery number 49. So, and she's like, well, Mom, she goes, well, probably number 49 down the road. So, she knows that, I do have setbacks, but, it's expected in our family. But when setbacks happen, you just have to be positive, and you get through them, and it's, everybody in life has setbacks, and it's the way you handle those setbacks. You can either be down about them or you power through them. And if you power through them, then it makes you stronger. And it makes us stronger as a family. And
I love it.
Yeah.
So tell me, Allie, how faith has played a role in your life.
I will admit, I am not one to get up every Sunday morning to go to church. I did go to Catholic school growing up. I did go to Incarnate Word for high school. Since the accident, obviously, yes, I did, while I was in the hospital the whole time, I did have the priest come in and pray with me while I was laying in the hospital bed. I feel like I am stronger to God since the accident. I know there were many times that I was very close to leaving Earth, ready to go. So I believe many of the times that it was my time to go, I was there, and not God, but I have an older brother who only lived 7 months. named Eric. My mom had before she had me. One of the times that I was gone, I don't remember. It was in August, so the first thing I remember was September. In August, I supposedly opened my eyes and I mouthed to my mom, Jason and I will be fine. I talked to Eric. And my mom lost it. She went to the chapel of the Columbia University Hospital and just started praying. And I do believe it was, I talked to Eric, and Eric was like, no, Mom's already lost one. She's not losing you, and Jason's going to be fine. And I do believe that I was there and talked to Eric, and I think I'm not even supposed to be alive. I'm alive. I'm a teacher. I'm a mother. I'm, doing things that I shouldn't even be doing. My brother is walking. He plays golf. Things like all the guardian angels that we had on the Highway 70. There was a cardiac surgeon going westbound who got out and gave me CPR. And if the doctors say that if he wouldn't have given me CPR, I would have died right there on the highway. He called every Monday to the university hospital to check on me, but never left his name. Things like that. I do believe in guardian angels. I do believe, I do, pray to my brother. I pray to God. I'm not, I don't think that I need to, I know people need to go to that church to feel that connection. I feel like, I'm not saying I have a special connection, but, and I will go to church, to pray and to do things, but I feel like my faith is stronger in some ways because I've, made a couple extra trips up there and in ways.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I absolutely adore you guys, love your family. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on today.
Yeah.
And I hope to share your message with a ton of people. Cannot wait for your book to come out.
I know, yeah.
And man, just love you guys. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us.
So what you tell me, you lead me here. What's all out of bounds, not out of bounds? What are you comfortable talking about,
anything.
not talking about?
Anything. That's why I'm still here.
So you're okay talking about the time that you got arrested and sorry, Jenna, I didn't know you.
No, that's my husband. He's not here to defend himself. Right, Jenna? We can agree on that.
The people that listen, the whole idea is to be inspired. So
yeah.
Awesome. What do you want to say?
I'm open to whatever. I'm honestly just here to get out of class.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I know.
I can't see you.
Okay. I'll take a second.
My favorite coach.
I'll take